SC2 could look very entertaining.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think that while uThermal might be slightly favored, the two of them are very strong right now. And DnS did look very strong against Marine Lord, which is, I think, an opponent of a similar caliber, maybe a little bit under uThermal these days.
Yeah, not a bad point. We're going to kick this off down in the bottom right-hand side with the Red Protoss player. This is DnS.
And in the top left-hand side, playing for Team Liquid and Washed, it is uThermal. uThermal.
uThermal. You know, if DnS is going to win this, I think the one thing you've got to do is survive the first 5 or 6 minutes, because I think that's a lot of the time where uThermal is the most dangerous, when he's able to play that aggressive game. His multitasking is some of the best in the world. He is very good at hitting you in one place, or having you believe he's going to hit in one place and then hitting somewhere else, right? And he's very good at moving your units around. It's almost like, you know, you're playing chess and he gets to move the white and the black piece. And you're like, well, that's not fair, but that's what uThermal kind of does in these TVPs with his own units. He forces you to move around, and that's how he creates his openings, and he's so good at it. So watch out for that in this early game.
Completely agree, and I couldn't agree more about the player being uThermal for those attributes, because he really is playing that chess game. He is a very cerebral player, and this is kind of the ghost aspect of Micro. A lot of people tend to think of Micro as your ability to move the pieces, you know, when you want to move them, but it's also why you're moving them and where you're moving them, and uThermal is brilliant at that. So we'll see what he's able to do. At the same time, look at this. DnS getting spicy.
Yeah, I'm going to open with that pylon on the left-hand side, and he's going to start up a bit of proxy action, it seems, for us in the start of this game, which I'm also not against, right? Maybe if DnS can take control of the game early, you don't get uThermal play his kind of favored style. As you can already see, uThermal, second Reaper on the way, Factory coming up, all of this before he starts an expansion. It's already setting up uThermal to be aggressive and to get damage done. And this little attack of DnS, if he hits with a whole bunch of Adepts and uThermal has Reaper Hellion, that can be very difficult for uThermal to clean up if he gets caught off guard, out of position, or if he's just reckless with his units in general.
Yes, indeed. And we see a lot of the time it's very difficult for Terran players to defend against the likes of a proxied Void Rays. So that is exactly what uThermal scouts for right away, and actually goes up to 2 Reapers and a Hellion for this move out. So a little bit of a TVT-esque opening here. There is no shield battery for DnS, and maybe this is something that uThermal's counting on.
Yeah, it is going to be terrifying, the counterattack that DnS has, though. Even if uThermal gets in here and does a bunch of damage, I think what he's doing right now is maybe some of the better choices, putting some damage on the Adepts, not just trying to run the units by and give them up for, you know, eco damage, especially just because of what DnS is doing. He's now going to be on 3 gateways, able to warp in Adepts across the map. And again, you look at what uThermal has at home, really nothing at all. So any which way, it's going to be a close defense, and especially so if these units are, you know, not actually alive any longer.
Yes, indeed. Another 2 shots of those Adepts will kill either of those bruised up Reapers, as now DnS looking to shade in on top of the units here of uThermal. Will most likely let the shade finish. As he does, a Hellion will fall. And that's it.
Yeah, that's a pretty cute little grenade to start. This is buying uThermal a lot of time, right? So now he's got the Cyclone, the Viking on the way. And these are things that really can give you the chance to actually say, oh, okay, I actually have a way to defend this now if these Adepts come across the map. So liking it a little bit more for uThermal, but again, you still got to get those units actually out. We still got to see this defense happen. On the plus side, there's nothing like on the low ground to be picked off. There's no SDVs down here already, so that's decent. But remember that uThermal obviously delayed his expansion initially as well, so he's way behind on workers.
Yeah, and that Stalker actually somehow survives on the side of DnS. A good attack here from DnS, and I'm actually surprised that uThermal's going after this army, but it seems to be working out okay so far, but not anymore. As that Cyclone falls, so does the DPS of uThermal, who is going to have a tank to anchor here and to try and help out. But if that tank falls somehow, he is going to be in a lot of trouble. All right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, tank's going to save him for the moment, but at the end of the day, it's not even about surviving. It's about the fact he's down 19 workers. His opening was, you know, delaying a base to try and, you know, get damage done, and he just didn't do any damage. So now uThermal really is stuck in a pretty bad position all around. I mean, his production is set up, what he's really got to aim for, I suppose, more than anything else, is just, I mean, hoping that maybe DNS underproduces units and doesn't really respect this properly. Maybe then uThermal can get an attack across the map, but to me, that's the only way DNS is losing this. Of course, DNS has committed a lot of units early, so his tech is behind, no blink, etc. And maybe that's something that will help uThermal as well.
Yeah, you would think so. I was thinking about tech, right? I was thinking uThermal does have somewhat of a tech advantage. But then when I look at what he has, I mean, he doesn't have something like, say, a Banshee with Cloak coming out, which would just most likely just kill DNS, or would have killed DNS, right? So DNS taking all the right risks, and it's beautiful for him. And I mean, he does have information as of to where the gas has been going for uThermal. He knows that there has been a Cyclone, 2 Reapers, right now tanks. So he knows that he doesn't have to account for those things, but him being low tech, I think, will play in his favor as long as he doesn't maybe just outright die to this, as he has a lot of Stalkers without blink yet.
Yep, these Stalkers doing the best they can to kite, of course. uThermal putting the tanks in the front because they outrange the Stalkers. They can actually get shots off guaranteed. Obviously, it's then risky because your tank's in the front, so if they outnumber, they will be shot down. He's picked off a good few units moving across. I'm a little worried for DNS because it does feel like you're maybe getting in this position which, if these tanks get sieged up, they can just end this game. I mean, Blink is so close to being done, but it's still not just ready yet. uThermal's going to get up here. He's going to get between the natural and the third, and it's going to be on DNS to break this position now.
Yeah, he will have some shield batteries to work with and an overcharge available. He might have to use it soon. That was a big volley, and there's 3 tanks now sieged. The Immortal is going to be instrumental here for the defense of DNS, but it pops in front of a lot of units. DNS looking for a little bit of a flank. Maybe catching that tank would have been a nice breath of fresh air. A couple of Zealots being warped in as well to soak up the initial tank shots when he does decide to go, but I love the setup, especially with that bunker from uThermal as well.
Yeah, uThermal's doing all the right things, and he's putting pressure on as well. He's not just letting DNS sit back and do nothing at all. He's going to force DNS to make a move, so here we go. DNS does blink in. 2 tanks go down pretty quickly. A few Marines could jump in that bunker, but no priority on that yet. The Immortal's just gone. It's not part of this fight at all. New Immortal out, just sat back, but the problem is with the commitment to that fight from DNS where it was, he wasn't close to a battery, so the super battery didn't do much other than keep the Immortal alive for like an extra volley of tanks. Now he's going to pull probes into this as the Stalkers blink in again. Friendly fire from the tanks onto the Marines, lifting the Vikings up and moving those around. Ex-Marines show up. uThermal will utilize that bunker. I mean, he's doing damage, but remember, he needs to pretty much win the game off this. He's got no tech behind it, no stim or anything, and now he doesn't have the AoE from the tanks, and I feel like missing that is probably going to be game over for uThermal, as DNS can break this much more easily, and now with Blink in play, should be able to hold off any further threat. There's no way uThermal gets back in position.
Yeah, and DNS has just been investing everything into army, not even making an Immortal because it would take too long and it would be too big of an investment to have outside of the fight. Instead, he will start that charge on 6 Zealots, and if that charge ever finishes, it's over. But this might be enough too, as DNS blinks in and cleans up.
Yeah, just had to kind of make the move, right? Like I say, uThermal, when you lose that initial tank count, you really lose the power in that position. I think what uThermal did was great. I think a lot of what he did was correct. Just the initial builds didn't match up well for uThermal, so he was just so much further behind than you ever should be in that scenario, and hence, even though he made a lot of right moves, it just wasn't enough in the end. And, you know, a lot of the time, these sort of pushes, you kill 10 probes, an Immortal, a whole bunch of Stalkers, you completely reset the Stalker count. A lot of the time, you go home off of that, and you're like, cool, I macro up from here, I'm in a great position. But when you're down 20 workers after killing 10, you just still can't do that. And again, that's all a repercussion of how this early game played out. And this time around, uThermal's little dodgy Reaper Hellion build, trying to be doing something a bit different, really didn't pay off for him.
Do you feel like he was anticipating or expecting something like a proxied Stargate or something like that? He did scout with the Reaper, but I don't see, like, I don't know. It just felt so lackluster, the opening. Or was it just the fact that DNS opened with those 3 gate adepts that caught him off guard?
I just think it's like, this is literally the worst thing that can happen to you as uThermal, right? Because it's unit production against your own weaker unit production, essentially. But what uThermal's units are great at is if DNS does put a tech structure down, then he is going to be able to get by, run by, deal damage. If there's just one adept, one Stalker at the front, you can't stop that Reaper Hellion. They can trade and you can transition, set up a tank attack, whatever. But when there's a lot of adepts that quickly, you saw how uThermal's army was just outmatched. His tech was so slow because he's invested into Reaper Hellion. So I think more than anything, it was just, you know, you're not really prepared to deal with that one build. I think the build order advantage was to DNS. Because again, think about what else DNS could often do. You oftentimes see a Stargate. Well, if that's the case, the Root Battalion keeps the Oracle at home to defend, or you kind of dive through and the Oracle has to come back home and you trade out workers, whatever. It feels like there's an answer to most of the builds Protoss players go for, apart from an aggressive proxied gateway and 3 gates before tech.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that takes me back, your explanation takes me back to when the attack hits for uThermal, there's already 2 adepts for DNS. And the second one was just arriving at the perfect time, which just means that the build orders are going to line up heavily in favor of DNS, right? There was no window. There was like a 1-second window where uThermal could have fought with an advantage. And that just means, maximum profit for the side of DNS. So thank you for that explanation, Wardy. And now we are loaded into game 2. So we'll see how the build orders stack up this time around. Are we already in game? We are. And in the bottom left-hand side, the Frenchman, DnS.
And in the upper right from the Netherlands in Team Liquid, this is uThermal.
How do you say uwu, Wardy?
I'm not going to lie to you, cats. It's not something I've ever really said.
Oh, well, there's always a first.
I guess you just say uwu. You just said it. So I'm going to say it the same. How else do you say it, though? Do you say
Well, usually I call them uThermal. Uwu. Like uwu.
So you put a bit of a cute voice on it.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be a cute thing, no?
Yeah, I get that.
But then I asked Nate, and I liked his because Nate taught me to say uwu.
What?
Yeah, I'm not sure which one's right. See, it's a great.
I don't think there's any right or wrong. I think it's just you're putting your own little bit of flavor into your own bit of personality.
I suppose that could be the case. Let's see Wardy's take on it then.
My take. I mean, I guess the problem is we've discussed it too much now, right? So now I'm overthinking it.
That is true. Yeah,
it's
difficult. It'll come to you. If we go to game 3, I expect an uwu to introduce uThermal. But until then,
okay.
You can sit on it.
And hey, if we get uThermal for interview, we can ask him how he wants it to be said.
That is a very good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that should just be a question we ask everybody now. From here on out.
How do you say uwu?
Yeah,
and if we get DNS for an interview,
because it's about your personality, right? So then you get to know more about the players rather than just describe yourself. That'd be a great content segment. DreamHack, you go get these players back on the calls and you ask them how they say uru. I mean, that would be a great 1 minute of content. I would watch that.
We will learn so much from that.
Who needs to know about what they think about map pools, man? I just want to hear them say uru.
Hells yeah. All right, that probe won't be saying anything ever again, as it's dead.
Absolute destruction.
Absolute destruction. A Stargate, though. So uThermal almost wishes that he had been a little bit more aggressive. At the same time, this map, a little bit more difficult to be aggressive because of that ramp leading into the natural, right?
Yes, the ramp into the natural. This is not really a map where you usually fight into the natural as a Terran a lot of the time, right? It's a deny the third base map because the natural ramp up, etc. are hard to fight, but then you look at the third base and you've got rocks to put tanks behind, etc. That Adept gets a little bit too feisty, and that helps uThermal defend this time, the ramp. So Adept now going down. Good little start for uThermal. As the Stargate pops out, let's see what DNS wants to build. Let's see if it's an Oracle or maybe a Phoenix. It is going to be Oracle. I think that makes a lot of sense. Get a bit aggressive initially, and then maybe you can go Phoenix after if you want to. Against uThermal, I love the idea of going Phoenix because, again, if you're going to have to deal with someone who's going to try multitask and be aggressive with lots of little units, Phoenix are so good at denying that.
Yeah, they're really, really good defensively early on. And Terran usually has bits and pieces like mines or Hellions that are easy to pick off and not particularly cheap. So yeah, I would love to see that. I love that that the ramp has shown us its power already in this early game, and I like the solution from DNS was to go for those adepts that can shade in and kind of bypass the ramp, whereas the likes of Stalkers cannot, so they would have to go up and find nothing. So it's a nice little start. The Oracle surprisingly going to the natural, seeing as DNS should know that the Marines are here.
Yep, Oracle going to loop around, gets an SCV to begin with, so not a bad start at all. And they're going to come into the main base too, and yeah, this is going to be a pretty good start. A couple of workers going down. This is definitely not what you want to see as uThermal.
Yeah, maybe one more SCV as the pulsar beam still turned on, and another one. Really nice job here from DnS. Is going to get 5, 6, maybe? No. Runs out of energy at the last second.
uThermal's attacking though, and you got to look at this right now. The way that uThermal's set up is actually pretty good against what DnS has been doing. DnS built Phoenix, right? So now he's got an Oracle out of energy, 2 Phoenix, and a few Adepts against what is really a completely anti-Stargate build. So many Marines in this game, he didn't waste any time building anything else. And then even a Siege tank to back this up. uThermal has a lot of power here.
Yeah, but that was a huge pickoff onto the mine, which is going to allow for this shade if DnS wants to go for it, and he will. He will actually go after the medevac, it seemed like, but instead goes after the Marines. I like that a little bit better, but will it be enough? There's only 1 liftoff left over. The Oracle now trying to save things for DnS, but it has no energy, or at least it chooses not to use it this time around. The medevac is gone as well. And with the next set of weapons, I think DnS will be able to stabilize, though. This Cyclone might have something to say about that.
Yeah, these Phoenix have a few lifts left on them, so the Marine count's going down, but reinforcements are here. Bunker now here, Viking and the Cyclone definitely helping as well. I mean, this Natural is just starting to die. Phoenix are going to loop around the back and maybe look for reinforcements. I don't know if I like the lift on the tank because it takes a lot to kill it off. It's going to get to drop back down here. Has to relift it. The probe's pulling, but 11 workers have gone down. There are still Marines and Cyclones, and now the Phoenix don't have the energy cats to keep this going, and so many workers going down for DnS. This Adept looks like it's going to fall. I mean, he's going to target fire down another low HP Phoenix. SCV's trying to keep this Cyclone alive, and it is staying alive.
Wow.
And it will get onto the ground. As we see the Viking landing, another tank showing up again. This is just the question of, can these Phoenix ever get energy to lift again? Well, a new Phoenix will say absolutely yes, but what about all the other units? Tank here, I mean, lift the Viking. Tank will get some more damage done. I mean, this is maybe going to get pushed back, but uThermal did the damage needed to make up for what that Oracle did at first.
Yeah, absolutely, Wordy. And I love what you pointed out too. I mean, I can see what the idea from DnS was, but he was working on a different joint than the tank, right? Like, he was actually picking off a lot of these anti-air units. So I feel like if he just picked off the Cyclone, there was like, what, 3 or 4 Marines left for those Phoenix to deal with over time, but he felt like he needed to lift up that tank so that he could pull the probes. And for a second there, it looked decent, right? It looked like the probes were actually getting this around. The Phoenixes were never going to kill the tank. I mean, look at how ineffective they are at that. And this ones will actually finish off that tank after 2 full liftoffs. But yeah, a little bit questionable definitely to pick off the tank.
Yeah, I mean, the tank, killing the tank at least does slow down the future pushes, right? It does depower uThermal from continuing later. So, yeah, I can kind of see it, but no, I also see what you're saying. Lots of Adepts coming across as DnS. He's still just been pumping out Phoenix and Adepts. So, outside of these Phoenix, his tech is really just non-existent, right? So, it almost feels like he needs to do something right now. Because look how late the Twilight and the Forge are going to be here. So, he's going to be way behind on upgrades. There's going to be a very powerful Terran army long before there's a very powerful Protoss army here. Apart from maybe right now as Adepts come in. I mean, you see that tank getting lifted up. It will go down, but with Marines coming through and Vikings firing, overall uThermal is not in too much danger.
Yeah, and then that tank on the high ground as well. Yeah, I think the tank on the middle of the map that he picked up was perfectly fine. It was the initial one that you had issue with, and that I also feel like he should have done something different about. But DnS has managed to stabilize. Somehow he is on 3 bases, mining fully and adding a lot of gateways. So this could still get dangerous for uThermal if he chose to say a timing where he is attacking into charge and +1 mass zealots or something like that. If he doesn't catch wind of what DnS is doing and that he is very low on tech, like he's not really looking to add those Colossi that most Protoss players will add on the back of those Phoenixes, then uThermal could still be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's see as we see these Phoenix still trying to poke forward. Vikings going to push that back. Obviously, with uThermal having that 3rd CC down in position, it's going to start being a pretty good eco for him in this game as well. I mean, once he hits stim and combat shields and he pushes forwards, we'll really see kind of how powerful his army is in this moment. Templar Archives on the way from DnS. I guess you would have to add on some Archons here initially to help survive, and then maybe you can go to Storm. I know some of the Korean pros have preferred going Storm early, but I just don't know if you can really do that after what I would call a bit of a weaker start.
Yeah, completely agree with you. He's also kind of low on gas. So I would very much like for DnS to kind of all in on an army comp that hopes not to get scouted and then uThermal runs into mass charge lot and a couple Archons or something like that. And then it could get really nasty for the Dutchman. So we'll see if he's able to gather information. I'm not sure what he is trying to do for that. He has one Marine out on the map, and otherwise it's a little bit dark.
That Widow Mine just splashes into all of the Phoenix, and the thing is with the Phoenix, right, they are so much of your army at the moment that if you start taking splash damage and they're easily picked off, you just target fire them in a fight and they die in a few seconds, and okay, they soak a bit of damage, but that you need more than that from them. So gotta be careful with those. Don't want to be taking too many more Widow Mine shots dead center on them.
Yeah, I almost wish this army from DnS was hiding somewhere else, because I expect that uThermal will be scanning at some point, and the third is a good location to scan. So again, if I am DnS right now, he is now getting upgrades, finally, the armor upgrades, but for the most part, I still think that he is hoping that uThermal will attack into this. So we'll see if that ends up happening, as uThermal is happy seemingly transitioning into the later stages of the game, as he's adding 3 ghosts, but this might also proc the timing. And there's the scan that I was, hoping he wouldn't get caught by.
Yeah, it's nice confirmation for uThermal as to the fact that this is just Zealot Archon and that these ghosts are going to give him a pretty good chance to move across the map and make a pretty decent initial fight happen, right? You EMP down those first few Zealots, get a couple mine shots on them. It can go, very much so in your favor in terms of cleaning up, a pathway into your opponent's base. So, if anything, uThermal's confidence is probably bolstered quite a bit right now, as he will start to move out. And here we go, Cats. Push begins. Now the Phoenix are going to try and counterattack, try and buy time, or pick off reinforcements. Either or, right? Anything you can do to slow uThermal down or to weaken this attack. And that's how they're going to find it. A depth shade into the natural, but, well, uThermal's already there with units as well. And the first EMP is already lined up on a few Zealots, and that's going to put the batteries to work.
Yes, indeed. So maybe super battery already, and there it is. Actually, very nice job from DnS also to take down the rocks. And I still think this looks okay, though the mines are fantastic from uThermal. The Phoenix is picking up a lot of those units, and it looks like DnS is headed for a strong cleanup here.
Yeah, he is just going to come and sweep through this. Now, I got to say, you said the mine sets are fantastic. They really were. From the left-hand side, they hit so many of the Zealots, but it just didn't matter. And uThermal gets pushed back, and DnS is going to go on the hunt to just clean this up and to win this out. And DnS, a little bit of an underdog going in, but absolutely looking like the favorite player with the way that this series is played.
Yeah, it's looking like it, and this is kind of what I was scared from uThermal. I really wish that he had pulled back and didn't push with those ghosts, because the army from DnS doesn't really scale that well. He doesn't really have tech as the game progresses, and these Zealots really rely on surface area, right? Which is why breaking those rocks, absolutely brilliant from DnS, who is gonna take the 2-0 to make Nate correct here.